Hello to you and you and you. Hello to everybody watching around the world. Thank you for joining us here with Foot District. My name is Brendan Dunn, and this is Foot District Takeovers, a series where collectors from around the world discuss their favorite shoes. We're going to be talking about the Air Force One today. A little bit of background if you don't recognize this beautiful face and this thick mustache. Again, my name is Brendan Dunn. I do the sneaker content at Complex and Soul Collector. Maybe you've seen Full Size Run. Maybe you've heard the Complex Sneakers podcast. I hope so. But listen, today is not all about me. Like I said, we are here to discuss the Air Force One, an iconic Nike shoe from 1982 that has meant so much to so many people over the years. It's not all about me. I keep saying that, so I want to introduce the other people who are here with me today to talk about the Nike Air Force One. The first person I want to bring in, Chris Danforth. Hello, Chris. Please introduce yourself to the people out there.
What's up, guys? Chris Danforth here, coming to you from Berlin. I'm a writer and a photographer, and I've worked for lifestyle publications in the past, like Hypebeast, Complex, Highsnobiety. Glad to be here. Hello to everyone watching.
Chris, thank you for joining us. We are excited to hear about your long history with the Air Force One, your favorite pairs, ones you've hunted down over the years. But I want to bring in a couple more people here for this Foot District Takeover. So the next person I want to introduce is Mikey Dab. Let's bring in Mikey.
What's going on, guys? Great to be here. Mikey Dab, some of you know me as the Camp Out, notoriously known for just being a sneaker releases, running the lineup situation, also do some content for a couple different sneaker stores, and just a sneaker enthusiast.
Thank you for joining us, Mikey. A man who has been, like he said, in many a lineup and has seen many a sneaker release over the years. So I'm happy to have some of those tales, especially New York specific, because the Air Force One is such a New York shoe. There's one more person I want to bring in with us here today for this Foot District Takeover, and that is Terry Tech. If we can bring in Terry right now.
Hello, guys. So Thierry here, French guy living in London. I run a creative agency called Visionarism for the last 5 years, and big Air Force One fan, as well as many other sneakers. But yeah, the Air Force One is one of my favorite ones for sure.
I've heard Thierry has a lot of Air Force Ones in the stash, so we're definitely gonna see some of those today. I can't wait to do that. I want to talk first though, just to get everybody out there watching acclimated, how we kind of got into sneakers, and I'm sure the Air Force One is part of that journey for all of us. So Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how you really started being obsessed with shoes and sports footwear?
Yeah, for sure. My interest in sneakers actually kind of connects with skateboarding. For me, that's kind of where it started. I was never great at skateboarding or even good at skateboarding, for that matter.
Okay, we appreciate the honesty.
Totally. But I always appreciated skateboarding culture and connected with the culture more than maybe the skate deck itself. I worked in a skate shop in Canada called West 49 growing up, and the first pair of shoes that really made me say wow were a pair of Lakais, actually, which is not really a brand. It's part of the conversation today, but it was a model called the Telford. And they had really interesting color blocking, and I just thought they were so cool at the time. And then later on, the high school that I went to, we actually had uniforms, but once a month we were able to wear, regular clothing. Civvies Day, it was called Civilian Day. So, I always tried to come with like a fresh pair of shoes or like a World Industries t-shirt. So yeah, for me it was skateboarding.
Mikey, what about you? I know that you come from New York, and like we said, that's such an important sneaker city. Tell me about how you got into sneakers, how you found it as a passion and a love.
I think sneakers at a certain age, like probably puberty area, it's like puberty and getting fresh. They go hand in hand. And I think at a young age in New York City specifically, you need something that you can wear. It's versatile, has a lot of different ways that you can wear it, hence the versatility. And Air Force One was one of those shoes that if you bought one, you were able to wear everything. And that's kind of, not everybody has $1 million when you're at that age. And really Air Force Ones and Cortezes were probably the first two shoes that I spent my own personal money on to kind of like.
Do you remember how much Air Force Ones were at the time?
I want to say I worked at a sneaker store. I'm not gonna lie, so I got a discount. But I want to say they might have cost me $56. And for me, I was like, all right, I bought two pairs. It was Air Force Ones in all white and Air Force One with a yellow outsole and a yellow tongue. That was it for me. I was sold.
Beautiful. Terry, what about you? Tell me about how you first got into sneakers.
I feel like I've always been into sneakers as a kid in France, just because. So I was born in Paris. And as a kid, I've always been into sports, tennis, basketball. I was watching it, practicing it. So every year at school, I would have one pair of shoes. Usually it would be a pair of Air Max. You would just kill it during the whole year and trying to be the coolest kid at school. So yeah, you have to be very wise in your choices at the beginning of the year when your parents ask you what you want. And I think I really started to collect sneakers at around 16, where I spent money on my first shoe that I was planning on taking care of and keeping for a long time. And
what was the shoe?
It was an Air Force One.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that.
White on white.
Do you still have them?
No. So the funny story. So I was telling Mikey yesterday, I hate the Air Force One mid now. I love the lows. I love the highs. I can't stand the mids anymore.
Out of it. Yeah.
The thing is, I don't know if you guys remember, like people wearing them with the strap off. So it would just like flap around, and as soon as they were dead, they were just coming down like out of shape. And I wore them because the shop of my parents the basement was flooded, and he was like, "Hey, come help me." And I was like, at that time I had like probably like 20 pair of sneakers that I loved, and I was like, I'm not gonna wear any of these. The only one I was willing to wear was that pair of Air Force One mid. That was my that was completely destroyed already.
Them.
So yeah. So they gone. They went to the trash.
Perfect. I want to mention a little bit my background with sneakers. It really was like an internet thing for me, mid 2000s, like 2005, 2004, just discovering that there were these online communities like Nike Talk where people cared about sneakers and people were trading information about sneakers or really obsessed with them and using them to say something about their identity. I feel like a lot of people come to sneakers through sports because they are sports footwear and they have these memories of Michael Jordan on TV wearing a certain pair or something like that. But it's just like we didn't really watch. I had one channel on TV growing up, so we didn't watch sports or anything in the household. So I don't have any of those moments. For me, it really was like an internet thing and just being a kid on blogs like Hypebeast and High Stomati. Chris, you mentioned those. So that's kind of my entry point into sneakers. I want to talk a little bit more. We've already got there a little bit, but kind of what sneakers look like where you guys were specifically. So, and again, maybe the Air Force One is part of this, but, what shoes were like in your neighborhood or where you grew up?
You want to take it? I'll take it. I'm jumping in there.
Please.
So growing up, obviously Cortez was super big. Like I want to say early to mid 90s, Air Force One, Cortez was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere.
Wait, no, you said obviously, but why? Because to me, we associate the Cortez in the United States as a West Coast shoe. Is the Cortez big in New York like that when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, the Cortez was everywhere. I couldn't go. VIM was the place that I shopped at, but I worked at a sneaker store, and like he never got Cortezes. I had to go to VIM to get Cortezes, which was kind of like the allure of it because you couldn't just get them anywhere, which is out of the window now. But back when I was first getting into shoes and getting into dressing up, because that's really what it was all about for me, It was Air Force One, like I mentioned before, and it was something that you can wear across the board. So I bought this pair. It was so random. They were yellow, and I always wore denim. It was diesel jeans or Janko jeans, and they covered the entire shoe. All
You're really taking us back.
Was a yellow outsole, and it was like that was the only thing that highlighted my sneaker. And the best part was I didn't have to worry about the upper too much because the whole shoe was covered. But like realistically, my entire area, that was the only pair that I could find in that color. Otherwise, I had to go to another neighborhood to find a different color. So like locally, the Air Force One, kind of like its original base was that you had to go certain places to get certain colors. So I knew where people were from based on the color shoe they were wearing.
Interesting. Terry, what about you? I feel like people talk about France as a big Air Max country, or Paris specifically. I feel like I hear a lot about Air Max in Paris. Is that accurate, or were you guys big on Air Force Ones too?
Not at all. I grew up in the Parisian suburbs, and the biggest shoe back then was the Tiennes. So you could see every possible colors. That back in the days, that was the most expensive shoes that you could get before they released the shocks in 2000. So basically,
is that why people wanted them, because they were expensive?
I don't know. Obviously the design was incredible. It was very different. I remember the first time I saw them. I was going to the swimming pool, and I saw two adults having the original blue colorway and the other one having the tiger orange one. And I was like, what the hell is that? And like a few months after, I started seeing kids having different colorways of them, and I wanted a pair. But no, it wasn't so much about the price of them. But once I found out in store, I wasn't getting a pair because it was too expensive. It was like 1,200 French francs back then, which, like I said, it was the most expensive shoe you could get.
What is that?
I think the same price, I guess, as today is like 130 pounds, maybe something between 180 to $200, I guess. When back then I was allowed Air Maxes for, I don't know, the equivalent of maybe 100 euros, maybe a bit less. So it was really hard to get hold of them. But yeah, the Tiennes were really, really big in Paris back then.
I heard Tiennes are nicknamed in Paris or in France the Shark. Is that true? Your experience?
Yeah, it's called in French. It's named requin, which means shark. And because they just look like sharks, really. That's just what people were calling them for. I think that's where it came from, and that became a nickname that stuck with the years.
Chris, I want to know more about your footwear background, because I think you mentioned Vancouver. Like, I don't know anything about sneakers in that area, in that region. Like, were there specific trends you saw?
Not so much. Like, Vancouver is not so much the cultural hub that Berlin is, or London or New York, obviously. Like I said, I was wearing a lot of skate shoes. I was big into Vans in high school. I probably didn't have my first pair of Air Force Ones until I was like 25, to be honest. But yeah, Berlin has a bit more to talk about. Berlin's not a city that's very obsessed with fashion like Paris or Milan, but it's definitely got its own style. So a lot of trends in Berlin are driven by what people are wearing in clubs. Berlin stereotypically kind of has like this black, subdued, like techie goth dress code. So you'll see a lot of that inspiration, and just a lot of like really beat up shoes that you can tell they spent like 10 hours on the dance floor, Asics, Reeboks. And yeah, you can like learn to sort of recognize this club style. But people in Berlin, they're not really obsessed with keeping their shoes fresh. Like, I feel like Jason Mark and Crep Protect and this kind of thing, it's not really popular in Berlin. Like, people just wear their shoes, and having super dirty kicks says more than having super clean kicks. But yeah, in Berlin, I think vintage is also pretty big. Like, there's lots of great vintage stores. So yeah, that's kind of my view on Berlin. But I wouldn't say Air Force One is like a big shoe here,
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny you said Vancouver is not the cultural capital that Paris or New York is. Listen, I grew up in Idaho, so right next to the Canadian border. So if Vancouver is not a cultural capital, then Northern Idaho is so far down that list. So I agree with you. I know the feeling, and for me personally, like, there's no specific sneaker trend in the place that I grew up. Again, like, I came to all this stuff through the internet, so I was always just seeing what other people around the world were doing. I kind of like first experienced that so I'm originally from Oregon, birthplace of Nike, and I would go back there a lot, and I went there for college at the University of Oregon. So I feel like that was the first time I ever got this sense of geography connected to sneakers, because if you go to the campus in Eugene, Oregon for University of Oregon, again, Phil Knight, Bill Bowerman, such long Nike history there. You can see how entrenched it is and how many pairs of Nikes you see walking around. I remember specifically when I was in college, this is 2008 to 2012, like so many Nike Frees, Nike Free Run 2 with the bird cage on it. You would just see that shoe everywhere nonstop. So for me, that's like the closest thing I can claim in terms of a real geographical regional type thing. But I do want to keep this on the Air Force One, because we're here to talk about the Air Force One. So I want to ask you all, because if you're into sneakers, you have to have some stories about the Air Force One. So I want to know, and Chris, I'm kind of interested in you, because you said like the first pair was a little later on in your life. So I want to know like how we all got into the Air Force One.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, the energy around the acronym collaboration. I was working at Heisenberg at the time, and it was exciting because, Aeroson's from Berlin, acronyms based here. And it just sort of seemed like it brought a lot of energy to Berlin. Like, obviously, those first three colorways created a lot of noise. And, talking to Aeroson, like, he did more than just like color block or add elevated materials. Like, it was a very disruptive design. He told me he took a pair of scissors, right, and just cut the upper to create where that zipper goes. And then obviously the lunar sole is like, very interesting look. So yeah, that's kind of like a story that I really relate to. Like, obviously I've gone through several pairs of white Air Force Ones. But from an objective place, I just really appreciate the shoe on like a cultural level. It just ticks so many boxes. It's cool as a GR, it's cool as a collaboration. It's like the perfect shoe to customize. We all saw the memes. So it's just on so many levels, like you can't deny the cultural credibility of it, really.
Mikey, what about you? I want to know, like, to me, again, Air Force One, New York, that's such a rich history. Like, were you born with a pair on your feet?
It's kind of rough. I was actually born with one Timberland and one Air Force One is how I came out. Jumped out and started stomping around. But no, seriously, it was definitely like hip hop and music. I definitely love Jordans. Jordans are what drew me into like sneakers, but I couldn't afford them. That was like one of the draws to working at a sneaker store at that time was like I need that discount. Like, realistically, that's where I need to be.
Yes.
Downside for the Air Force One story is the dude that worked there in the stock room was, for lack of a better word, an a-hole. Like, just rude. He was mean. He was a bully. He was terrible.
Okay.
And he wore Air Force Ones every single day. And it was one of those things where I associated Air Force Ones with like an anger, because I was like, he was older. He was like 17, talking to girls, and I was like 14. I was like, I hate this guy so much. And then like after a little bit of time, he got fired. He got caught stealing shoes. And then I felt comfortable to start wearing Air Force Ones, but I wasn't going to wear white on whites because they reminded me of him. And that's why I bought that white and yellow pair. I was like, I need something to look fresh that I could wear all the time, but it's not going to be those white on whites. For a little bit of time, I got to let that pain subside before I get into white on whites.
You have this very specific negative connotation with this one colorway, and that stopped you, even though you knew the white on white Air Force One, and we'll talk about it more later, was such a classic.
You needed it, and like everybody wore a white on white, and at that, I mean, even still now, like when I buy a pair of white on whites, if they go to a certain level of depreciation, as in a crease, a scuff, they got to go. Like a nephew, a friend, a cousin, somebody's getting them, and I just go buy a new pair.
Yeah, well, what is that level? Because again, this is a New York thing that is kind of translated to across the world. But and I want other people to chime in too. Like, how much do we wear a pair of white Air Force Ones before we replace them? Before we totally scrub them down and make them fresh again? Before we like you said, Mikey, give them to a friend?
Takers on
I want to know. I want to know.
Okay, so like realistically, if there's probably one wear, I'm not gonna lie to you.
One wear
after one wear of, I would say, anywhere from more than 3 to like 6 hours of wearing that shoe and getting a crease, I probably won't wear them again. I'm not gonna lie to you. And not to sound bougie or anything like that, but like it's just how I was raised wearing Air Force Ones. Like if they look creased, the correlation to a creased, dirty, white on white pair of sneakers, they might as well be a pair of black nasties. And for those who don't know what black nasties are, that would be a black Air Force One low. Like you it's the same thing at that point. The all black nasties is the same as a dirty pair of Air Force One whites, and like the way society is working right now.
Correlation there.
In my mind, that's exactly what I see. You just stay away from that person because they don't care about life anymore.
Yeah, Terry, for you, is it the same thing in Paris? If you scuff up your Air Force Ones, they're done.
I would say it is probably now on a pair of white and white, even though I kind of take care of my shoes, so I wouldn't let that happen unless it's an accident. But back in the days, how I got into Air Force One was as a French kid. Obviously, nobody was really into Jordans or Air Forces, but I was starting to get into hip hop. I started b-boying with my friends, so we kind of like were watching videos of American b-boys a lot, New York b-boys, and the breaking scene. You could see obviously the music that goes with it. I was starting to listen to a lot of American rap and stuff. When you watch the video clips, obviously a lot of people are wearing Air Force Ones, and you see their baggy jeans. And I had that stage in my life where I was wearing triple extra large white tees with baggy jeans and Air Force Ones.
I wish we had the photo right now to show.
I need a photo of that.
I wish as well, because like I would love to see that again and cringe. But that's how it started for me. And that first pair I wanted to buy, back then it was like 90 euros for a pair of mids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I walked into the store, found a pair. That was my money, and I thought, that's a pair I'm going to take care of. And that's how it started. Then I started finding every possible colorways in factory stores. White with red swoosh, blue swoosh, whatever I could find for 40 euros, like very cheap, because nobody really cared back then. So that's how I started building my little Air Force One collection.
You said you were going to take care of them, but then you just told us a story about you wearing them to, what was it, clean out the basement when it was flooded?
That's the thing. Like, obviously, it was the purpose, but
right.
I actually got I was at school, someone stepped on them, and it was an accident. And since that day, I was thinking, it's okay. Like, I can still wear them. But then, the strap starting to be completely out of shape.
Yeah.
They had to go eventually. They had to go.
But wait, when somebody stepped on them, was that beef in that moment? Like, tell me what happened.
No, actually, it was a girl.
Depending on where you are, that could be okay.
No, I don't know. Like, I was 16 or 17. Like, I think I was 16. Just being at school, and a girl just ran and scuffed them on the side, and I was like, and that was like a big scuff. And the white and white Air Force One is not an amazing quality, so it turns once you scuff them, it's gray underneath, and that's it. They're not pristine anymore.
Mikey, have you ever had one of those moments? It's such a movie moment. You think about Do the Right Thing, when the guy rolls up with the bike and runs over the toe. I feel like have you had that with the Air Force One on the train or something like that?
I've had that happen in school. Like we definitely people like it's not even like a joke. People would really fight over getting your shoes scuffed, especially like in high school when you don't have a lot of money, which I'll keep going back to. You don't have a lot of money to just keep buying shoes. So you finally broke your parents down to get you a pair of shoes. You're wearing them in class that first day, and then as soon as the bell rings, you step in the hallway and somebody just steps right on your shoe. Like, your immediate reaction is push. It's not even like you're not swinging over, you're just like push off the shoe, and then their reaction is like, what's going on? And then it's just a brawl. So yes, many campouts is another terrible place to wear any kind of shoe.
Of course,
like you want to flex, but you also know that you're going to be a sardine at some point. So like they're going to get stepped on. Yeah.
And it's funny because Chris, you were talking about in Berlin, that's not necessarily the case, right? Because you're describing this culture where people go to clubs and they get their sneakers messed up all night. So it may be not even a big deal to have somebody's entire footprint on the toe of your Air Force One.
100%. I mean, in Berlin, there definitely is that hypebeast kid, who's wearing the off-white and wearing the new Jordan 1s and wants to keep their stuff pretty fresh and pretty clean. But I see that as like a newer thing, like for sure, what people are wearing in clubs, like what people are wearing to Berghain, obviously not in the past year because everything's closed, but before that, I think the real authentic trends that you see in Berlin, like they all come from clubs. And you can see somebody like, on the train or whatever, and they have a totally thrashed pair of like kind of techie Asics or Reeboks or something, and like you can immediately recognize that's a club kid. You don't see a ton of super clean Air Force Ones in Berlin, to be honest.
Interesting. I remember when I first got into Air Force Ones, which was, I think I bought my first pair in 2007, so my last year of high school, and I remember it was so important to keep them clean to me, and I wanted at that point. I was envisioning a future where I had enough sneakers to where I could keep one pair clean, or where I could have a rotation of like, this is a really nice shoe. I think it was the Philly Air Force One with the red toe box and perforated white leather on the upper. And I remember just being like, how do I protect these? Because this is such a special shoe. I bought them from a resale store that was in the nearest city in Spokane, Washington, and definitely paid too much for them. But that's beside the point. It was just a shoe where I knew I had to kind of keep it special. And again, the Air Force One, it's something that you want to be fresh. I think it's such a New York viewpoint, but it's one I agree with, Mikey. Like you said, I want to talk to, I mentioned just now kind of going to great lengths to get Air Force Ones or driving to a city somewhere far away. I want to ask what stories you guys have from hunting down Air Force Ones. And Thierry, I actually want to start with you here because you had an interesting anecdote earlier talking about being in France and going around to different factory stores and finding rare colorways and things like that. And I think there's a lot of special Air Force Ones we think about, even with regard to France, like Courier, with the gum bottom. So Thierry, tell me about what that hunt was like for you in France.
So in France, like I said, it wasn't a big thing, but there was a small community of people with a few big collectors. And I don't know if you guys heard of it, but you guys in the US had Nike Talk. I was looking into that as well, but my English wasn't so good. I was looking at pictures mainly. But we had something called sneakers.fr, which was a website with a forum where all the French, sneaker enthusiasts would go on. And there was a few Air Force One heads. I'm thinking about my good friend JB, who had the craziest ones. It was the era of sneaker play. I don't know if you guys watch sneaker play. And that was an American website, but you had the big guys like Mayer, DJ Clark Kent, and you would see their collections. And obviously in France, not many people had any of those shoes. You mentioned the Couriers. That was probably one of the coolest one we had as a French exclusive. But otherwise, it was pretty hard to get amazing colorways. And so obviously getting in France was okay because when a store had a pair of Air Force One, even a limited edition, there wasn't that many people after them. So if you were there in the morning, you could get it. Like, I'm not saying...
So you're in line and you just get right back in line and get them again?
The thing is, back then, like, I'd probably do it today for a very valuable shoe to double up or, whatever. But back then, like, if I had enough money for one, I was very happy. You get your shoe and you would go home straight away and, smell it and be happy with it. That's it. But one of my favorite Air Force One stories was... I think it was around 2010, I think. I'm not sure about the year. I was going to London for the first time. So now I live in London, but I went there for holiday because I was contemplating going to study there for a year and a half. And I heard through the forum that they were releasing the Nike ID Premium MX. So that was a new ID program for the Air Force One. And it was only available in the Nike Town studio in London. So I went there and I called up saying if I could ask him if I could have an appointment.
Hold on, so did we fly to London just for a pair of shoes? Because that's a moment.
No, to be fair, like it was part of a trip that I was going to take to visit the city before studying. But obviously, in my head, like my parents took me for that, and in my head it was like, I know what I'm going for real. So I called the Nike Town London and I was like, hey, can I get an appointment for that Nike ID? They were like, well, actually, it's VIP only, media only, on invite only. I was like, oh, so I didn't have an invite. I didn't know anyone in London. So I went on the forum and asked, does anyone know how I can get an invite? And back then I would go to do like some photography for store reviews in the forum. And they were like, we can't help you, but if you want, ask and say you're part of media and that you do photography for sneakers.fr, and maybe they'll let you in if you do like a little feature. So I went in, I went to the store, and my English was terrible back then. Not that it's amazing now, but it was terrible back then. And there was a British guy that couldn't understand what I was saying. And he was like, hold on a second, I have a guy that speaks French here. He brings me someone who became a very good friend called Ash, who is from Mauritius, that so they speak English and French. And I was like, so what do you want? And I was like, look, I want to design a pair of Air Force One ID Premium MX. I heard it was, for medias only, and I happened to do photography for that forum, that website. They were like, okay, let's go upstairs. So at that point, I was like, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna get a pair.
You're in. You're in. Like,
yeah. So the guy's like, look, I'm gonna take you through the whole experience. He takes me to that private cube where customers couldn't go in, and he was like, okay, before we design that shoe, let me show you something real cool. What's your size? I was like, I'm a 9.5 US. I was like, cool. He brings me a box with no tag on, and he was like, so that was February, right? And he said, this is gonna release in May. That's this shoe. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. So that's the try-on sample that they were going to release for the 10th anniversary of Nike Adi. I'm not exactly sure, but he was telling me there is only 105 pairs in the world, 35 in London, 35 in New York, and 35 in Tokyo. And they're extremely limited. That's the gray version of the ID that you're going to get. They call it the try-on, the grays. And he talks about it, and at that time, I'm not even listening to what he's saying. I'm just looking at the shoe thinking, oh, how am I going to get that? And I was like, okay, so are they for sale? He was like, unfortunately, no. They release in May. I was like, oh, all right. No, unfortunately. He was like, but you can have those. I was like, what?
It was that easy?
That's crazy.
Now working in the industry, I receive gifts like you guys, I'm sure, but that was my first gift from Nike. So that was very meaningful, very special. And then I got to design the pair of ID, which became a gift as well, that they shipped to me as soon as they received it back to Paris. But yeah, that was one of my most memorable Air Force One stories.
You really came up, man. You came in there not even sure if you could get an appointment, and you walked out with 2 free pairs of super rare things.
And I took amazing pictures that day. So
yeah, I want to see those pictures. Chris, for you, are there any stories like that where you had to go to great lengths to get a pair of Air Force Ones?
I love hearing stories about that, about going to outlets. And I also tried to get an appointment at 21 Mercer at one point. No luck.
To do a bespoke?
Yeah, exactly. My story is from maybe like the more contemporary side of what Nike's been doing on the digital side. It was one of the first sneakers stash drops that was that Nike organized. So basically, a friend of mine at Nike kind of tipped me off to be at Alexanderplatz in Berlin, and at some point, it was one of these geolocated AR drops. Yeah. So on the digital side, I thought that was really interesting, where you had to sort of go around the block and then look for one of these QR codes, and eventually there was a big truck with a picture, and you could scan it, and then you would unlock the shoe. So for me, I had never really experienced a release mechanism like that, and I was just really impressed with what Nike was doing on the digital side, and now we've seen them do more of this, doing these geolocated drops at the Super Bowl and whatnot. So for me, that was really exciting, and then also hanging around after I secured my pair, and then just seeing all these young kids from Berlin getting off the train and running around Alexanderplatz. And it was a really cool moment, and it just seemed like a very sort of authentic moment again of hunting and collecting, and something that's more exciting and more engaging than just hitting the buy button online.
Yeah. Wait, what was the shoe? I don't know if I missed it, but what was that Air Force One?
Oh, sorry, it was the Virgil. It was the 10. And I think it was released it was maybe a month ahead of the actual release of the 10 project. So
yeah, they did some special sneakers drops ahead of it. Yeah. Mikey, I want to ask you too, because you've been to a lot of campouts over the years. I'm sure you've been on some missions for some Air Force Ones. Tell me some of the crazier ones.
So I only have one that's really near and dear to me for this. So the original linen Air Force Ones that dropped, I wasn't able to get, and it's probably one of my favorite shoes of all time. So in 2016, we all know Kith opened in Miami, and at the time I was doing releases for Kith. So I was like, you know what? They didn't really let anybody know leading up to the drop that it was going to be there until it was a week before. But obviously they gave me a heads up, yeah, no, we're doing the Miami thing. So we'll see you when we come back. And I was like, I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just go to Miami and get a pair? What am I doing? So I was like, I finagle my way. I was like, listen, I'll come down, I'll run releases for the weekend if you want to do that. Trying to sneak because I don't want to be hey, just bring me a pair, because we were only releasing a Miami.
You want to be in there in the mix.
So I wound up flying down to Miami. It turned out to be like my birthday weekend that weekend too. This is probably everybody's like, "What's your grail?" This is my grail. Like definitely one of my favorite Air Force Ones of all time. Even though it is the remake, I don't care. I wear the shoe probably once or twice a month. I don't mind that it's beat. Once I put it on, the leather is great. It's probably the only Air Force One that I'll wear and disrespect it this badly and love it this much.
Do you have other pairs or just the one?
Oh, I had other pairs. I had four pairs on my way back up from Miami. So like well, people were like, "Oh, you're there. Could I get a pair?" So like, I didn't want to be a scum about it. I was like, "Pay it forward." Yeah. So I came back with a size 12 for a friend, a size 11 for another friend, and two 10.5s. The other 10.5 went to another friend of mine. After I wore it a while, he was like, "Dude, you got to give them up sooner or later." I was like, "I'm gonna beat these up, and then you can have them." And now I beat these, and I wish I never gave the other pair up.
I'm so glad you brought up the linen Air Force One because obviously a Co-JP shoe from 2001, a lot of people herald it as the best Air Force One ever or one of the best Air Force Ones ever. But when it came back out at Kith, I feel like there were so many pairs and they were quite easy to get. Even on resale sites, you could get them for $250, $300 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I actually have a pair right here too. And I bought mine on resale because I was like, I have to have this shoe. But years later, it's appreciated a lot, and now they're quite hard to get, and you have to pay $1,000 if you want a linen Air Force One, which I'm not necessarily happy that it's reselling for that much, but I'm like, oh, this makes more sense in terms of how much the shoe is worth, historically.
I definitely feel better about it now, because at first I was like, don't disrespect the shoe like this, please. Please.
People, if you ever need another one, I'll sell you mine.
What's that thing? No. No, but like, so that release... Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
That release, it was 3 days long. So like people were coming back and like trying to double up and triple up. And at some point I was like, do these people not realize what shoes? Like people were coming in, seeing the shoes and leaving. And I was like, are you crazy?
Air Force One.
What is going on right now? It was
yeah.
I digress.
No, it's the linen Air Force One is a big deal. I'm glad you brought it up. I think one of the ones that really stands out for me in terms of getting Air Force Ones was, I think I mentioned at the top of this, I'm in New York now. I've been based out of New York for the past 8 years. And when I first moved here in the summer of 2012, the Supreme Air Force One Low was dropping. And that was such a cool shoe because it felt like overdue for Supreme to have it done. And I don't want to be too back in the day with it, but back then, if Supreme was dropping a Nike project, you might be able to just go line up on that same day and get them. So I remember the Supreme Air Force One, and I have a pair here. I had a couple pairs because this is the pair I lined up for that morning. The black with the gum on bottom, just a beautiful shoe. They're actually a little bit uncomfortable because of this NYCO material, the waterproof stuff. But I love this shoe so much. But I remember that Thursday morning, I think September of 2012 it was, I remember buying the sneakers on the Supreme website in the morning and then just walking up the block because I worked in Chinatown, which is not far from their original store in Lafayette, walking up the block and getting in line and getting a second pair a couple hours later. Like that's how easy it was relatively back then to just get a pair of these. And I'm happy to still have both of them, but it wasn't a long camp out, but it was a fun one. And it was such a moment of like, buying a pair of Air Force Ones. Again, I'm gonna keep coming back to New York because it is a New York shoe so much, and being at Supreme and it being a Supreme collaboration, and just this moment in my life where I felt like I had arrived on some level. You know what I mean?
That is probably one of the best shoes out, by the way. I like the camo pair.
I got the camo pair too. I'm only missing the tans. Maybe I'll go back and get those one day. By the way, we talked about linens and maybe Supremes are up there too for people, but I want to talk about these shoes that are in conversation for the best Air Force Ones of all time. So I feel like we shouldn't have a hard time agreeing here. I know there's one sneaker in particular that people often come to as the best Air Force One of all time. Mikey, do you want to kick us off with your thoughts, like maybe top 5 or what you think is up near the top in terms of best Air Force Ones of all time?
Honestly, like I want to say I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Air Force One. Like I think white on white and just the university colorways and just colorways that are original to the shoe. Like when they redid the B-more joints, like I'm not a fan of a high, but I can appreciate it as probably being something that should be in the conversation for one of the best of all time, just because of the origin of the Air Force One. Personally, I don't like crazy Air Force Ones. There's only one crazy Air Force One that I own. I'll just pull it out.
You about to pull out Entourage on us? Where are we going here?
No. This is
Okay.
probably
It's like, how crazy are we getting?
One. No. I definitely would never do that. This is the craziest Air Force One I own, except for stuff that I dye myself because I like to dye shoes. This is wild for me, but probably one of my favorite and probably one of the more creative Air Force Ones that I think have come out in.
Okay, but we're not saying best of all time. That's your like right.
That's
Travis Scott the first one.
I'm not.
Because people get upset.
I'm saying personal best of all time. I say B Moore's got to be in there 100%. I think Sue Storm Invisible, the Invisible Toe Box Air Force One is probably one of the greatest of all time. I'm just going to throw it out there. I definitely have to add Linen to that list as greatest of all time, and then I'm going to lay off the list. I'm laying off the list there.
Okay, and white on white is in there too, right? Or
I mean, that's a standard. Yeah, I feel like that's a given.
Okay.
Like you can't have Air Force One without a white on white. I'm sorry.
Chris, I want a counterpoint, or I want to hear your thoughts on this.
So actually, I have a follow-up question. I never got to the bottom of why there's Cyrillic writing on the Travises. Like I didn't get that connection. Do you guys know why that is?
I didn't either.
I have no idea.
Love it.
I assume
Travis on the show next time to ask him.
Thierry knows.
I don't know.
Nobody
It's
knows.
a mystery to me.
Well,
we
I
should
think
probably get to
actually,
the bottom of that, though.
if anybody knows, yeah. I mean, yeah, I have some Air Force Ones that are obviously, that I'm a personal fan of. Actually, a different Bruce Kilgore design that actually I'm, a bigger fan of that I love even more, the Sock Racer, which is interesting because, same designer, but in so many ways, those shoes are totally opposite. Like the Sock Racer is so unstructured, such a good summer shoe. And, I'm not totally familiar with Bruce Kilgore's entire, design catalog, but those two shoes are very opposite in some ways. So I think that's interesting. But for Air Force Ones, I mean, the linens, I had an ask on StockX for a while. Wasn't really willing to pay upwards of $1,000, but I think those are so clean. For me, like the story of all those record label editions, like Shady Records, Terror Squad, Rockefeller, basically those are unattainable for most people. But I think that story is so great and just adds such a nice, like, sort of cultural layer to the whole story of the Air Force One. And then for me, I think one of the big ones that opened up the door for like fashion collaborations was the Riccardo Tiscis. Like those are so great. The low top was obviously a bit more wearable, and then you had that like gladiator boot. And I think
those were crazy.
Yeah, we saw a lot more fashion collaborations after that, and that's also around the time when Riccardo was at Givenchy. So just a lot of energy, around that moment. But yeah, lastly, I think it's one of the best stories and maybe like the origin of sneaker collecting in general is the whole Color of the Month program.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just love that story so much. And like, I know, Mikey, and, you're from New York. And so that's obviously something that's more authentic to you. But like, for me, reading about that, I just think that story is so cool. But yeah, for what I would wear, linens are number one. I would love to have a pair.
Gotcha. Thierry, talk to me. Tell me some of the best. Personal or best of all time. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we're going there too.
I think we all agree. I think we all agree. I mean, I'm going to talk about my favorites that I own. But yeah, the linen from 01, the OG. I bought these.
Just so I can join the club.
There you go. There you go.
You need to get in the club, baby.
Oh.
Yeah, man. Like I bought these about 6 years ago from Worm Tokyo.
Yes.
So I didn't pay too much for them. I think with custom, it was like probably 400 euros, 400 pounds or something like that. So it was still quite expensive back in the days when resale wasn't crazy. But yeah, I looked at the box, and I can show you real quick. Like there's a sticker from Atmos, and it says 9,000 yen. So it's like 65 pounds. So that's probably like $80, something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was the prices back in the day.
I'm glad you all agree on that one.
Quality-wise, colorway, like everything is amazing about this shoe. So I'm really glad I own them. Another one that I love, one of my favorites from the One Walk pack.
Okay, there you go.
BZP, yeah. So that again, it takes me back to a time when I was a student and released that Colette. Like, you know, very lucky to be able to get my hands on them. I think there was 500 pairs worldwide, released only in Paris, I think. But yeah, at first everyone was saying, "Oh, what a crazy shoe! Like, I don't like it, too colorful." And I liked it straight away. Like, you know, all the details on them. And I think right today it's a shoe that is quite sought after. Like, a lot of people are quite after them, and it's quite expensive to get. So yeah, I'm very happy with those. For Brandon and Mikey, a New York shoe that I love, the Brooklyn.
Right.
That's one of my favorites as well. I mean, like, the details that you wouldn't get in a lot of Air Force Ones, you know, stitchings and tongue tabs. This is like one of my favorites as well. It's brand new. I never worn them, but yeah.
You want to give a lick Fat Joe style for us?
No, not right now. That's not my style.
No.
My style.
No.
Then I have two more to show. You guys were talking about white on whites. Obviously, white on white had to be in the top 5, but this one is a bit special. Nike lasered them for me, so I wanted like a mini swoosh on it, and they lasered the Eiffel Tower for Paris, where I'm from, and the Big Ben for London, where I'm based now. So yeah, I wore them once at Fashion Week in Paris. I'm never going to wear them again. I'm just going to keep them. Like, I'm kind of pissed that a little bit of creases are starting to appear, but yeah,
you might have to throw them away.
They got to go in the garbage. That's it.
If I was Mike, I'd give it to a cousin or something. But then the last one I want to talk about, something a little bit more current. Once again, like, I want to say congratulations to Ronnie Fike and my friend Frankie for opening the store in Paris. That is an amazing shoe, not just because it's an Air Force One, but like that mini swoosh with the French flag is just like very unique. Never seen that. It's amazing. They did a French Air Force One for the World Basketball Festival. Forget the year, like maybe 2010 or something like that. That was a pretty boring shoe. There was a French flag on the tongue, full navy with a clear sole, but it wasn't so special. That to me is something special. And yeah, I'm very happy to
out these France-specific ones too.
Yes,
I have to represent my country, my home country.
Where the hell is?
I love that. I want to pull out a couple of my personal favorites, and I think these are up near the top. And of course, I'm biased because they're my favorites as well. But in terms of best of all time, so we got to talk about, you know, you see the old box, but white on whites. I think this pair is like late '90s, so these are still dead stock. But this is, you know, just. I don't know how well you can see the letter quality, but this is
the lining, the shape, amazing.
Yeah, and important too if you see the embroidery on the back here.
Oh yeah.
So late '90s Nike Air Force One, white on white. I mean, it's the freshest shoe that ever existed. You know what I mean? And then so obviously that pair is still dead stock, but one of the ones that I do keep in rotation, I do think this is one of the best Air Force Ones of all time. I don't know if I'm ready to call it the best, but at most Air Force One, another Code JP, you know.
I need
Japan
these.
Exclusive type of thing.
What size are you, Brandon?
We'll talk. We'll talk, man. Those are some personal favorites for me, and like I said, I feel pretty comfortable putting them top 5. Linen as well. I'm so happy to have a dead stock pair of linen Air Force Ones. We've shown off some shoes that we have for a while here. I want to talk about shoes that we don't have. I want to talk about our grails, and I want to be Air Force One specific here. What are your grails? Mikey, it sounded like you had an answer there right away.
There's only one. It's actually it's a pack. It is an Air Force One, of course, but it's a Huarache-inspired Air Force One. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Here, definitely know what I'm talking about. It came in the original green and blue colorway, and then the purple and black colorway. So like it has the Huarache neoprene sock liner for the tongue, the little impression on it. That's probably one shoe that, like, if I could find in really good condition, I would spend money on. Find it in good condition though. For me, that is.
Are those hard to find? I feel like those are around, right? Like that's not a
in wearable condition.
Okay.
I want to wear them. Like, I don't want to just put them on the shelf and be like, I stare at it. Like, I want to say 98% of my shoes. So like, it's one of those things where like I want to get it and wear it. That's hard to find.
Got it.
Because it's usually like a DS pair or a Super B pair.
Yeah, maybe the people watching out there can help you. So Mikey's looking for the Huarache Air Force Ones. If we can help him source those, maybe there's a prize for you.
Yeah, slide in there.
Flood his DMs. Chris,
Easy though,
Chris,
right?
do you have a Grail that is Air Force One specific? Is there an Air Force One that has eluded you for a number of years?
It's got to be something vintage. I mean, I love the ones that you just showed, like the late '90s ones. Those are with like the circular Dubray, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, super jealous you have a pair of those. Would love a pair myself. Otherwise, yeah, one of like the throwback color of the month colorways would be
Yeah.
super cool. I don't think I'd wear them; those would be on the shelf. But yeah, these like very simple color block Air Force Ones. Like there've been a lot of really cool new ones, new collaborations again in the fashion space, but something that really represents like the core of Air Force Ones would be a vintage model. Yeah.
Do you guys have anybody here like old Air Force Ones that you really wear regularly? Because I feel like one of the nice things about Air Force Ones is they do tend to hold up a little bit longer than an Air Max One or an Air Jordan from the early 2000s. Terry or Mikey, do you guys have old Air Force Ones that are 20 years old that you still have in the rotation?
Oh God, no.
Yes, a lot of them are old, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mikey.
No. I'm definitely I'm a throw outer or a giveawayer. So like after I get a certain like peak with shoes or like even what's in my room here, I have to give it away or it has to get rid.
Yeah.
Your wall looks fantastic. That would drive me insane. I just can't. I
Yeah.
can't do it. So like I mean the one shoe that I'm like beating up right now, just this oversized swoosh Air Force. I wear these a lot, and that's in supplement to not wear the linens. But I'll wear these until I can't wear them anymore, and then they'll go to somebody. That's my most.
Terry, do you have super old stuff in the rotation?
I mean, I think it would sound really cool if I said yes, but I have all the stuff, but I don't wear them that often. Like when I was preparing for this talk and thinking about what I would show, that's like Black Friday Air Force One. That's a shoe that I would pull out for special occasions, for a few events. So I worn them quite a few times, like maybe 10 times, something like that. That's from '08. So that's a pretty old shoe for like a newer edition compared to like the linens or the Atmos. But that's one that I would remember to wear if it's a special occasion. If I want to wear all black and stuff, that's a shoe that I remember that I'll definitely pull out from the collection.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's
what about Grails for you, Terry?
From things I don't have, there's a few like the Atmos I was telling you. Never get to own them. The Entourage has been mentioned by you guys. I'd love to own a pair as well, but yeah, completely, crazy prices. And another one that is like was more realistic at the time was from the One World Pack, the cloth, the red. So I have all the other colorways. I'm going to show just the white one, but the red one, I remember. I was still pretty. I mean, not that young, but I've been offered a pair for €1,000, which
was
a
ton of money
if you
back
look at
then.
it now,
yeah,
exactly. So.
Like it doesn't sound a lot for shoes right now, but back then
Yeah.
1,000 was crazy.
It was like the special box. I was like, wow, that's a crazy amount of money. I'll never pay that. Now it's worth 5,000-6,000. So I wish I bought them, but I no regrets because I didn't have the money back then. So right now I'll be more than happy to drop $1,000 on these. But yeah, that just happens.
Mikey or Chris, do you guys have any regrets like that? I know, Terry, you said it's not totally a regret, but like of a shoe you passed up on years ago that you wish you would have bought, maybe an Air Force One?
I'll take it. Stash re-released the High not too long ago, and a friend of mine asked for them. Like I was like, you know what? I'll get them for you because I had access.
Nozzle cap on the upper.
They're so fun. So I get the shoe finally, and then I open up the box, and he had already like given me the money for them, and it was one of those things where I was like, I could have gave him the money back, but then I would have felt terrible. So I opened the box stupidly. I opened it and I hit it with a flash to send him a picture, and the shoe just looked so good. It was so, and like I'm not a big highs guy. I don't like highs that much at all. So I was like, nah, who cares about a high? But after I took the photo, I was like, I should have never agreed to this deal whatsoever. So I had to hand him the shoe. It was like one of those scenes where like you hand somebody a pair of shoes and like you're holding on so tight that they rip it from you. It was like that. So that was definitely one of the only times where like I gave up a shoe or passed on it, kind of. That really haunts me, at least for an Air Force.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
This might sound like heresy, but I'm actually kind of in a place right now where I'm trying to get my sneaker collection down to like 10 or 15 pairs. It's time for me to minimize. I know there's probably a lot of people that might disagree. I just don't wear a lot of what I have, and I'm not really like a collector either. Like I wear everything. I'm not keeping things on ice. Again, I know a very anti-sneakerhead mentality. So with that, like for me thinking about releases that I missed out on, there's nothing that really gets me where I'm like, in the chest, like I regret missing out on those. Yeah, a pair of white on whites.
Philosophically, you just don't believe in looking back like that.
Yeah, I mean, like my main focus is minimizing, to be honest. I want to have like 10, 15 pairs that I keep in heavy rotation. I don't want to be keeping up or taking up so much space. I mean, the Air Forces that I have right now, I have the acronyms, I have the Rockefellers. I'm going to keep those. But my mindset right now is really not like I need to get more shoes. I'm more in like a place of I need to get rid of shoes.
No, you need to get more shoes, Chris.
Yeah, weird. I'm confused. Okay. I just minimized too.
I can tell.
I know. I thought I was doing a good job. I'm trying to get rid of like 10 or 20 pairs a month, but man, I respect that angle, Chris, because I would love to be in a place where I have significantly less shoes. I've always told myself like if I can get it down to 100, that's a good place to start, and then get it down to 50 from there. I don't know if I could ever really get down to 15 or 10, but I salute you on that journey, and I wish you so much more than luck.
Thanks, man. Yeah, maybe 15 is a bit too aspirational. I mean, I keep like 3 pairs by my door that I wear, to run to the store, especially now. There's no need for flexing. So I'll let you guys know how it goes. I'll keep you updated.
That's Please. What it is. Berlin's got you in the headset where everybody's wearing beat up shoes and you don't care. That's what's going on here.
Maybe my heart has been poisoned, man. Maybe I'm just missing New York. I need to come with you guys.
Mikey, Thierry, what are you guys at in terms of how many sneakers you have right now?
Thierry,
I know you start now.
No.
So another funny story. So like I said, I'm from Paris and I moved to London 6 years ago. 6 years ago, my fiance told me, well, I know you have a lot of shoes, but bring 15 pairs, like leather shoes and whatever sneakers. But whenever you go back to Paris to see your parents, you can rotate, but we don't have enough space in our apartment. So just bring 15. That's what I did. And I did a little audit from how many pairs I had in Paris in my parents' flat, and I had about 650 pairs of sneakers. So that's including the fact that I used to double up, triple up on some Air Force Ones that I had friends who were working
all
for
the time,
and this, like getting discount. That was like 40%. So everything was 30, 35, 40 euros. Yeah. So that was cheap. So I was buying everything. I had 650 pairs of shoes, and I couldn't bring everything. And there's a lot of stuff, to be honest, that I would never wear again. It was just crap that I accumulated through factory stores and whatever. But, they're there. And after being in London for 1 year, I counted all the shoes that I had in the new flat in London. And that was when I started doing a bit of work on social media, this and that. So from 15... After a year, it was 250.
Wait, can we guess?
So,
I was gonna guess 200. Yeah.
I'll let you guess the last number. I'll let you guess the last number. So it was gift stuff I was buying. So I had a pretty good job back then, and I'm not a big drinker. I wasn't clubbing or anything. So I was just buying clothes and shoes and enjoying. And I accumulated a lot of shoes. They were everywhere, under the bed, behind the doors, everywhere. It was ridiculous. Since then, we moved to a new place. I have more rooms for shoes now. And
Love that.
So now, 5 years after that, I'll let you guess a rough number to the hundreds.
In London,
the closest one. Yeah, I mean, together? A lot of them are still in Paris in a warehouse. In the storage,
are we adding that 650 box from Paris? Is it like everything together?
Let's add it up. Let's add it up.
He's at
1,100.
That's that. About that. I haven't counted, but it's something like that.
11.5.
I haven't counted them, but like if I show you the room where I put my clothes, there's shoes coming every week. Like there's so many releases as well. You're trying to, be selective. But like I wish as well I could get it down to a certain number, but
Chris will help you out.
Yeah,
bring him over.
Chris, come to London and help me out. Help me out.
The pitfall is like I might wear these someday. That's like the dangerous question. Or the dangerous thing, like, I'll wear these someday. I'll bust these out someday. but you never do, in my experience. You know, they just sit there and yeah. But I feel you, like
Mikey.
Sorry, go on.
You got to force yourself Chris,
sorry.
sometimes.
I just wanted to ask Mikey, what are you at right now in terms of total pairs of shoes? If you can give us an estimate.
In fairness, I just moved. I got rid of, I want to say almost 150 pairs of shoes.
Love that progress.
If I'm to give you a totality of all my shoes, I'm probably at about 650, 700.
Okay.
And that's with my storage, stuff I put in containers, and what's behind me. So like that's where I'm sitting right now. And I want to downsize.
Trying to downsize more, or
I would love to. Am I going to do it? Probably not.
Chris will help. Chris is going to help us all see the light.
Chris is not allowed to. He'll find things that I can.
You should charge us, Chris. You should charge us for the service.
Yeah, I'll tax you.
I did some downsizing.
You got to pay him in shoes. So you go home with mad shoes.
There you go. I did some downsizing recently. I think I'm at like 400 right now, so I feel very proud of that. By the way, I do want to mention, we're running out of time here, but we were talking earlier about Air Force One Grails or Grails in general. I think the one pair of Air Force Ones that I search for the most that is pretty hard to find at this point is the Mushroom Air Force One. I think it's from 1998, and it's even hard to find extra because there's like a suede pair of Air Force Ones from a few years ago that is also called Mushroom. So every time you go to Google the Mushroom Air Force Ones, you end up with these ones, and it's not the right shoe. I'm talking about the 1998 one, but I don't know if they're going to re-release it. Somebody who is an Air Force One collector, who I won't name, but I'm sure we can all guess, had told me that Nike couldn't figure out the color quite right. So I hope that one day they figure it out, because I would love a pair of Mushroom Air Force Ones. Such a good colorway that's only released one time and never been back since. So that's kind of the one I'm searching for. Guys, I want to close us out here. I want to thank everybody for watching this Foot District Takeover. I want to thank all of you, Chris, Mikey, Thierry, for joining us here today. Again, I'm Brendan Dunn. This has been a Foot District Takeover. You can look out for the next one on March 31st, and that will be on the Nike Air Max 1. I'm sure a great discussion about another classic shoe. You can find more details for that via the Foot District Instagram. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Later.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.